Hey guys, how you doing? It's Tom. This is the follow-up discussion to the unsolved murder of Michael Hastings, a video that, at least for me, has been a very long time in the making. About 2 weeks ago, True Pundit tweeted out that they had intelligence that revealed to them what Michael Hastings may have been working on that presumably got him killed in a very conveniently timed car crash. For those of you not familiar with True Pundit, they have been scary accurate in reporting on information, and then 2 or 3 months later, that information being proven to be correct. So when I saw that they tweeted they may have information on Michael Hastings, I thought, okay, I better put together a very clear, a very concise report that you can show to your family, you can show to your friends, that people could click on, and at the end of the report, they know exactly the circumstances that led to the death of Michael Hastings, because otherwise information is going to come out on Hastings, and people are going to try to piece things together, but not be able to see the big picture. So with my reports, a lot of what I try to do is organize the information that's already there so that people could watch the report and have a basic understanding of the circumstances, in this case, the circumstances that led to the very convenient, depending on who you are, death of 33-year-old journalist Michael Hastings. Quick recap, of course, Michael Hastings had sent an email to Sergeant Joe Biggs the day before his death. And in that email, he said that he had to lay low, that the government, the FBI, was investigating him, his friends and family, and that he was about to break the biggest story yet, the biggest story of his career. And for those of you familiar with Michael Hastings, breaking big stories was nothing new. Michael Hastings broke a story that led to the firing of General Stanley McChrystal during the height of escalation of the war in the Middle East. Michael Hastings was a muckraker. He made it happen. And I showed in the Unsolved Murder of Michael Hastings, just some of the segments he did on TV. He was a mainstream media journalist who refused to play ball. Not shocking, got himself killed. One of the things he said on one of the clips I played was, the Pentagon press corps is just that. It's the press corps for the Pentagon. It's a propaganda arm. So Michael Hastings was no stranger to controversy. He wasn't afraid to go against the establishment. He wrote articles titled, "Why the Democrats Love to Spy on Americans." And of course, Hastings, McChrystal, Obama, Bush, Hastings went after everyone. He was a savage. I really look up to him. I hope I could be like half the reporter that Michael Hastings was, and I hope that, in a small way, I hope I honored him with the report that I released. But anyway, he emails Sergeant Joe Biggs, dies in a fiery car crash, and a day later, WikiLeaks confirms that Michael Hastings had reached out to attorney Gloria Robinson of WikiLeaks. So this continues a trend that we see of people contacting WikiLeaks and then dying. And this really sheds light on the danger of the American spy state. And you know, it's ironic. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Michael Hastings wrote reports titled, "Why the Democrats Love to Spy on Americans." And then during the Obama administration, he was presumably, Michael Hastings was going to break a big story, and that seems to have got him killed. So it's self-evident why it's a problem to have this massive Edward Snowden exposed American spy state. And notice that Snowden exposed the spy state. Snowden showed us all that the NSA was illegally spying on hundreds of millions of Americans, violating the constitutional rights. The Constitution is the high law of this land, violating the constitutional rights of hundreds of millions of Americans. And who was held responsible? The only person held responsible for that revelation was Edward Snowden. He was condemned in the press, the fourth estate, which is supposed to hold the government accountable. He was condemned in the press as a traitor to America. And if you ask half the people, the walking around mindless zombies, about Edward Snowden, they'll say, I don't know, he betrayed America. He betrayed America by giving up his freedom, by having to leave the country, leave his wife, leave his family to expose that the constitutional rights of 150 million Americans were being violated by the federal government, and he was the only person held responsible. And of course he was right, and it becomes evident in the case of Michael Hastings. He's a journalist. He has a report. He's going to expose corruption in the United States government. He's going to expose the corruption of the powerful, politically connected class, and the spy state picks up on that, and the next thing you know, he's burning to death in his car next to a tree. This is the danger of the American spy state, and I feel that, and I guess when you start working as a journalist, you really start to get a deeper understanding of why that's dangerous, because I do these reports on Michael Hastings being murdered. Well, presumably someone murdered him. I'm doing reports on the deep state, the CIA, the FBI. These are very powerful people. And you realize that, not even probably, they're watching. There's no question about it. They're spying. And if you have a story that, a piece of information that could do damage to these powerful people, you are in danger of being murdered. And this is the danger of the spy state. And of course, this week we see that they are trying to reauthorize the USA Liberty Act, Section 702, which of course by the USA Liberty Act, it's really the USA Anti-Liberty Act, just like the Patriot Act was the annihilation of the United States Constitution, the Fourth Amendment Act, but they give it a cozy name and the public just eats it up. They say, oh, well, we need this USA Liberty Act to protect you from terrorists. The terrorists that I'm worried about are the ones that have accumulated political power. Because the only difference between the United States government, between any government for that matter, the only difference between government and the organized mob, the mafia that you see depicted in movies, is that the mob doesn't have a 12-year education program, which is really an indoctrination program to convince the public that they're friends of the public. So, the spy state's a big problem. Rand Paul has been very outspoken fighting against the USA Liberty Act, Section 702. I always push for activism. Get involved. This is our country. This is your life. This is my life. This is our children. They have to come into this world. Fight back against the spy state now. Fight back. Call your congressman. Tell him you support Rand Paul's fight against the USA Liberty Act. Because once it's put in place, it's not going to come down. So, very dangerous things. And, of course, this gets into the targeting of journalists, right? Michael Hastings was killed for being a journalist. And this is toxic. This is how journalists should not be targeted, right? They're breaking a story, the spy state picks them up, you kill them. Or during the Obama administration, more journalists were targeted and prosecuted under the unconstitutional 1917 Espionage Act. Under the Obama administration, more were targeted under the Obama administration than under all administrations combined since 1917. So this is journalists being targeted through assassination and journalists being targeted through quote-unquote legality through the 1917 Espionage Act. This is very toxic. On the other hand, what we have seen thus far, and I hope he doesn't use the Espionage Act. If he has and I'm not aware of it, then I apologize. But what we have seen thus far from the Trump administration is a very relieving deviation from the targeted assassinations, the use of the Espionage Act that we saw from the Obama administration. Trump has attacked the media in a healthy way, in a productive way, because what he has done, and much of that is probably for his self-survival, although it does speak to him that it does speak positively for him that the media establishment is all against him, because the establishment, the media works for the political class. So if they're against him, the political class is against Trump, which in my opinion is a good thing. So the way he has targeted the media is he uses his megaphone, and he says, look, CNN is fake news. Look, MSNBC is fake news. Look, ABC is fake news. So he's used his megaphone to draw attention, public attention, so that there can be a public debate as to whether the media, the fourth estate, is actually doing its job or if it's a propaganda arm of the deep state. This is productive. This is driving a cultural conversation, a cultural change as to the merit, as to the authenticity of the United States media. A debate that this country has needed to have for a very long time. This is positive cultural change coming out of the White House, which is nice to see. And of course, calling out CNN, calling out ABC, there's nothing wrong with this. This is spurring discussion. What it's also done has helped enable the rise of grassroots media, has helped enable the rise of people like me who pay attention, who have done tremendous amounts of reading about this stuff, and it's so clear that it goes on that the media is just a propaganda arm of the politically connected class. It's drawn attention to this, and it's empowered people like me, and now we're having a public discussion as to the merits of these institutions as a whole. And what you're seeing is a break in society, because now you have a large segment of the population that has been indoctrinated through through the American education system to outsource their thinking to authority. That authority being the mainstream media, the political class. And then you have a break in that, a schism, a segment of the population, growing segment, waking up by the day, seeing the problems with these institutions, that these institutions are designed to be instruments of our enslavement. This is very powerful. So this is a very positive cultural change happening in front of us in our society right now. And it's hard to see these things as they're happening. But if you take a step back and say, wow, look at the cultural erosion of the mainstream media as a whole. This is such a positive development. And this will probably go untalked about when they talk about President Trump's pros and cons, his accomplishments. This may be his biggest accomplishment, whether it's directly his cause or him fighting for self-survival. This cultural erosion of the mainstream media and their power, their monopoly over the control of information, because information is the true source of power. This is why the political class has taken over the education system. This is why the political class has dominated the mainstream media. And we are breaking that control on information. And of course, speaking of institutions, speaking as government power and the FBI, the CIA, the political establishments as institutions, look at the danger of awarding these people power, of awarding these people unquestioned motives. If what we believe to be the case is true, and the evidence does strongly suggest it, then people like Michael Hastings, people like Seth Rich have been assassinated. American citizens have been domestically targeted and assassinated by the American government. This is the problem with government power as a whole, because all government truly is a monopoly over the immoral use of force. And this is why these checks and balances are so important, because once that monopoly over the use of force gets out of control, anyone who questions, anyone who goes after those in power is vulnerable, especially with the spy state, to being assassinated by the United States government. I mean, think about it. I'm a journalist, and sometimes when I break these reports, when I report on Seth Rich, when I report on Michael Hastings, I have to worry about getting assassinated. That's insane. But it's the reality of the situation we live in. We've allowed the government to get too big. We've allowed the government to get out of control. And the CIA, the FBI, they're just another one of those bureaucracies that we see. You know, the FDA is supposed to protect food, and instead what they do is they get paid off by the big food companies, Monsanto, and they tell us the food that we're eating is healthy. The public, who has been brainwashed to indoctrinate or has been brainwashed to outsource their thinking to authority, now they eat GMOs, they eat pesticides, because these very institutions that are supposed to protect the public become corrupted. And the problem isn't getting the right people in there. The problem is the institutions are in place, and it's inevitable that powerful people are going to take over, infiltrate these institutions, and use them negatively. So we need to scale back the size of government. We need to rein it in so that these institutions don't have as much power in the first place. JFK said that it was reported in the New York Times shortly after his death, that he wanted to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the wind. And when you get into those positions of immense power, you see the dangers of these institutions. Dwight Eisenhower, of course, warned about the military-industrial complex, and he also warned about the information-industrial complex, which I don't know if you guys followed the Corbett report. Not the one you see on the mainstream media on YouTube. The Corbett report. Type in the information industrial complex. He recently did bombshell report. Amazing reporting. I would strongly suggest you subscribe to the Corbett report. But type in the information industrial complex that Dwight Eisenhower actually, and I missed this, actually tried to warn the public about in the same speech that he warned us about the military-industrial complex. Very fascinating stuff. So with that all being said, we've also seen a major cultural shift, which is very positive. And that shift broke from when the mainstream media lost their monopoly over the control of information and the grassroots media got in. The grassroots media was able to change the narrative to the truth of what's going on in the country. And 18 months ago, if the mainstream media was approached and asked about something called the deep state, right? The deep state. The mainstream media wouldn't have acknowledged that it even exists. And now, because of the schism in media, we've seen another cultural change where the mainstream media has been forced to acknowledge the existence of the deep state. Politicians have been forced to acknowledge the existence of the deep state. They've called for investigations into the deep state. They've called for the breaking up of these institutions, of the deep state. So we have seen these major cultural shifts in America from this political awakening that has taken place. And I think a large part of that does have to be, again, whether he's doing it for self-survival or intentionally, has to be accredited to Donald Trump. Speaking of Trump and the deep state and the problems with these institutions, there are two main narratives in America right now. What are the narratives? The narratives are Donald Trump is an agent of Vladimir Putin. He's a controlled puppet from Putin. His entire administration is a controlled puppet from Putin. And the Kremlin is now running the White House. Or the other narrative, which is this whole Russian narrative, is part of a deep state coup, right? To undermine the credibility of President Trump, to undermine the credibility or the legitimacy of his election in November 2016, and to potentially remove him from office via a soft coup. Only one of these things can be true, right? So we're in quite a paradigm. And what we're seeing coming out of the deep state is you have information leaked, right? James Comey leaks information about his notes of a conversation he had with Donald Trump, presumably to try to get Trump impeached. And then you have information leaked on Andrew McCabe and Rob Rosenstein and their role in Uranium One. What you're seeing is different factions within the government. There are factions within the government fighting each other through espionage, fighting each other through informational warfare, releasing pro-government information, anti-government information. This is how the world really works. So you're seeing leaks on both sides. There is a civil war taking place within the government, within the CIA, within the FBI, and there are patriots, people who want to see liberty restored, versus people who are in the system of power and corruption. And again, it really speaks to why these institutions they shouldn't be this powerful in the first place. Also speaks to how powerful, how important the control of information is. Never let that escape you. The control of information is the key. It is the linchpin of power. But of course, we see these two different narratives. One, I would argue, is actually backed by physical evidence. If you watch my report on Uranium-1, Uranium-1 is backed by FBI court-documented bribes. Hundreds of millions of dollars of documented money to the Clinton Foundation. So, again, there's actually evidence backing up the one side. We are seeing a soft coup in America, and I'm going to make more reports about this, in-depth reports showing the actual financial ties, the connections between these people. But we have been seeing a deep state soft coup being waged against the Trump administration, whether you like him or not. I wish when they talked about the deep state, they would talk about the Council on Foreign Relations, which is really the source of where all this control of the deep state comes from. If you're not paying attention to the Council on Foreign Relations, you're not going to understand how the country works. The heads of the CIA, the heads of the FBI, the secretaries of state, all these people, they come through the Council on Foreign Relations. So it's another linchpin of power. So the Michael Hastings report really ties all of this in. The media, the deep state, the problem with the spy state, targeted assassinations, and how all of this is just it's a system of keeping, growing, maintaining political power for a very corrupt political class. So the Michael Hastings report's important. I hope you share this link. I hope you share the Michael Hastings report. Post it on Facebook. Tag your friends in it. Because we need to erode these institutions. We need to erode the credibility of the mainstream media. We need to erode the credibility of the CIA. We need to erode the credibility of the FBI. Because if we do these things, we erode people's trust in them, and people could start to think for themselves. And using case studies like Michael Hastings, like the very brave, the very courageous, thank you very much, Seth Rich, allows us to erode the public faith in these institutions so that people could stop outsourcing their thinking to authority and they could think for themselves. Because once this country thinks for themselves, information is the true source of power, and if the people control the information rather than the sophist, rather than the government, then the people take back the power. It becomes a government by the people, not a people that are subservient to government. Thank you guys so much for watching. I was very excited to do the Michael Hastings report. I was very excited to do this follow-up discussion. I'm probably going to do more just long videos of me talking about what I'm seeing in the world because I want to be able to reach more people. I want to be able to get my message out so that I could articulate at least my understanding of how the world operates and what the current state of America is. As I always state, don't view me as an authority. I am not an authority. Don't view anyone as an authority. There is no such thing as a good source of information. There is no such thing as a bad source of information. There is only information, so verify what you can. Anything you can't verify, tuck in the back of your mind. Know that it's there, and if you get the chance, you look into it, but don't report it as fact until you've verified the information for yourself. We are indoctrinated to outsource our thinking to authority from a very young age, and we need to get out of that habit. Please share this report. if you want to support grassroots media, you want to help empower me, I really appreciate it. If you go to patreon.com, FFRnews, the link is in the reference notes, for as little as $1 monthly, you could, one, give me the resources I need to do this, but two, I'm going to get to a breaking point where I have enough money from that I could just do this full time. And once I could do it full time, I like to think I can be a very effective weapon, media weapon, against the political establishment, against whoever is out there trying to manipulate the public, trying to yield institutional power to oppress the masses. Thank you so much. I'm Tom Anderson, and just on a side note, I'd like to say thank you to Michael Hastings for everything you do. I hope that I've honored your legacy with this report. I'll continue to report on your death, and I don't know what your religious beliefs were, but if you're looking down, I'm proud of you. I hope you're proud of me. All right, thanks, guys. Bye-bye.